You started on an Su-33, press escape and change slot to an Su-35. Good, you have moved over to an Su-35. On this mission, we will learn how to cold start the Russian fighter aircraft Sukhoi Su-35S, as developed for DCS by the codename Flanker community. You can employ both starts using ground electric power or starts with the onboard auxiliary power unit, APU. On the DCS option, select English as the avionics language if you'd like the training illustrations to match your own aircraft. On night missions, you can employ a flashlight to look around the cockpit. Toggle it to continue the training. Begin the training by pulling the red parking brake lever. Good, however, as normal hydraulic pressure is not yet available for park brake use before engine start, we will ask for wheel chocks anyway. Press the / key to communicate with our ground crew and request wheel chocks. Select F8, ground crew, F4, wheel chocks, F1, place.
Установить колодки. Принял. Командир, колодки установлены.
You can choose to start the aircraft in one of two ways, employing ground electric power, or using the onboard auxiliary power unit, APU. Press spacebar for ground power, or press backspace for APU. First, enable electric power by turning on both battery 1 and 2. Next, turn on the electric inverters. Verify the presence of 27 volts DC power on the main bus. To do this, toggle the left-right switch while monitoring the readings on the nearby voltmeter. Press spacebar to continue. Press the / key to communicate with our ground crew and request that a ground power unit be connected to our aircraft. Select F8, ground crew, F2, ground electric power, F1, on.
Подключить питание. Принял. Командир, наземное электропитание подключено.
Once confirmed that power is connected, set the ground power switch to on. Enable the 4 avionics power circuits, clicking their switches forward. Enable the 4 navigation systems power circuits, clicking their switches forward, to be able to perform the INS alignment. Use the highlighted knobs to adjust the brightness of the multifunction displays, twist them a bit to continue the training. This knob adjusts the upfront control panel brightness. This knob adjusts the heads-up display brightness. The highlighted UFCP button can set the HUD to either green or orange, toggle it to advance the training. The highlighted lever toggles the HUD sun filter, toggle it to advance. This knob adjusts the standby attitude indicator brightness. This knob adjusts the control display unit brightness. To begin the inertial navigation system alignment process, on the right console turn on the switches BINS1 and 2, and PNO. Next, press the PUN button to select the INS status page on the left MFD. Start the alignment by pressing the correction auto button. On both the HUD and left MFD, a timer will show up to monitor the alignment process. The alignment time is 2 minutes. While the alignment is taking place, we can proceed with other steps of the cold start. We can even start the engines as long as wheel chocks are present. Press spacebar to continue. Adjust instrument backlighting and flood light controls as needed. Set the day-night switch to select an appropriate brightness range for the multifunction displays. Set the exterior lights as needed, but we will activate the landing taxi lights only once we are ready to roll. Press spacebar to continue. Close the canopy to reduce ambient noise prior to starting the engines. Contact the air traffic controller to request startup clearance by pressing \. Select F5, ATC, F1, current airbase, F3, request startup.
104. Запуск.
104. Запуск разрешаю.
Once ATC has granted permission, press F12 to close the communications menu. Press spacebar to continue. Since the Su-35 doesn't have an anti-collision light, it's common practice for Russian jets to set the taxi light on just before engine start, and turn it off after the last engine is started. The switch has 3 positions. On the mid position the lights are off, up is for taxi, while down is for landing. Set it to taxi and press spacebar to continue with the engine start. We are now ready to start the engines, which are started separately, first the left engine and then the right. Move the left throttle to its idle position by unlocking the throttle lever with the keys right Alt+End. Good, now press for a second the left start button. It should on the right multifunction display, monitor the RPM rise, temperature, and the nozzle position of the left engine. Check also the readiness of the oxygen supply once the engine reaches 70% RPM. Good, the left engine has reached its 70% idle RPM, you can now switch its AC generator to on. Once the engine is generating its own AC power, set the ground power switch to off. Next, press the / key to communicate with our ground crew. Select F11, parent menu, F8, ground crew, F2, ground electric power, F2, off.
Отключить питание. Принял. Командир, наземное электропитание отключено.
Start the right engine. Like we did with the left engine, move the right throttle to its idle position by unlocking the throttle lever with the key right Control+End. Good, now press for a second the right start button, it should turn green. On the right MFD, monitor the RPM rise, temperature, and the nozzle position of the right engine. Good, the right engine has reached its 70% idle RPM, you can now switch its AC generator to on. The alignment has been completed. On the left MFD press the PUN button again to return the MFD to its standard page. Now that we have both engine AC generators online, we can finally enable the 4 remaining weapons power circuits, clicking their switches forward. Next, on the right console power up all the remaining avionics equipment. After both engines have started, on the LG page of the right MFD, check the indication of nominal operation of the oxygen supply, green nozzle indications in neutral position and the failure subpanel at the top being blank. Select the AEP page to continue the check. In the AEP page, check the DC voltage to be 27 volts and 115 volts for AC. Select the HYD page to continue the check. On the hydro page, check hydraulic pressure of the systems 1, 2, and the accumulator. Check also the pressure of the tanks 1 and 2, and the pneumatic system pressure. Select the fuel page to continue. On the fuel page, check the fuel levels. Press spacebar to continue. Extend the refuel probe to check its indication and deployment. Good, now retract the probe. Select the sys page to continue. In the sys page, check the operation of all systems, while also observing the right avionics power panel. Press spacebar to continue. We will now perform a check of the flight control surfaces. The ground crew will assist by calling out each surface movement. You can also display the controls overlay with the keys right control plus enter. Press spacebar to begin the check. Wipe out the control stick in all directions. At the same time, move the rudder pedals left and right. Good, this concludes the flight controls check. Press spacebar to continue the training. On the right MFD, input the correct atmospheric pressure, QNH, by clicking on the pressure gauge button, PG. You can obtain the QNH on the mission briefing, as shown on the figure. Then use the brightness knob of the right MFD to adjust the QNH value. For this mission, set it to 760 mm of mercury. Once the QNH correct is set, save it by pressing the PG button again. The QNH also must be entered on the Control Display Unit, CDU. Make sure that it is displaying its NAP page, then select the QNH entry. A data entry format is shown where you can edit the QNH value. Press reset to put the CDU in input mode. Press 1, the entry line should read QN. Press 0. Press 1 again. Press 3, the entry line should read QNH1013. Finally, press ENT to store the value. The CDU will return to its main page and the QNH should read 1013. Good, press spacebar to continue the training. To prevent collisions with the terrain, the Su-35 has a ground collision avoidance system, GCAS, set the minimum altitude which it should prevent flying under. It is set on the right MFD in much the same way as the QNH, but pressing the H1 button instead. Do it now. Turning the brightness knob of the right MFD, set the warning altitude to 500 meters, as indicated by the yellow caret. Once the yellow caret reaches the desired warning altitude, save it by pressing the H1 button again. Enable the nose wheel steering by lifting this cover and flipping the switch forward. Good, remember to close its cover. Arm your ejection seat by clicking on the red handles between your feet. The ejection seat should be the last equipment item to be armed, just before taxi, especially if you are starting up in an hangar. Arming the ejection seat before all electrical systems are enabled should be avoided, because a power surge or switching generators might set it off inadvertently. Congratulations, you have completed this cold start training mission. Please continue with the next one, where we will learn to taxi and take off with this aircraft. Press spacebar to exit the mission.